So what does all this have to do with, like, calling people like me Neanderthals?
Afrikaners, culturally, are black. Thabo Mbeki literally destroyed South Africa. The biggest problem with South Africa is that South Africans are being taught to have zero responsibility. Why is it everyone deserves reparations? The Jews, the Afrikaners, the Armenians, the Bosnians, the Serbs, you name them. Everyone deserves reparations except for the Africans.
So I asked my audience on X, and I said, I'm talking to you for this podcast. I'm used to getting hate. You're on another level, man.
Really?
Absolutely another level.
Extreme love.
Yeah, no, the opposite of that. The opposite of that, completely. So we've been chatting on WhatsApp for a while.
Yeah.
I saw the drama that you had with calling groups of people certain things.
Yeah.
Are you like Kanye Westing your way through life? Or what's going on here? What's the big idea?
Yeah, well, Kanye West is a very big inspiration to me from a musical perspective. You know, my musical production journey started when I was really young, when I was 6 years old. And then it only formalized maybe 6 years later when I was 12, when I started my record company in 2002. And at that point in time, I was really inspired by Kanye West's production on Jay-Z's album, like The Blueprint. I thought, like, you know, he was a really groundbreaking producer. And also, coming from the suburbs, like I did, you know, I felt I could not relate to hip-hop's street aesthetic.
Oh, right, like in America, like from the ghetto.
Yeah, okay. I needed to be from the ghetto to be like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But Kanye was like, yo, he's not the ghetto aesthetic. So I could see myself in him and through him. So I was very much inspired by Kanye. Everything, even like me trolling and everything else, that whole entire rant that I started in 2020 or 2022 when I got taken off of X the first time, was inspired by him because he posted up his contracts, right?
Yes.
And at the time I was a director at Sony Music in New York, but I was working I was opening up their South African office for the Orchard. So it's a coincidence that I'm wearing this today. It's just a little bit chilly. So with that, I summarized the contracts, right? I read through the contracts because I know contracts, you know, back to front. I know the legalese and everything else. And he retweeted it. When he retweeted it, like, I looked at my phone and I don't know if you've seen on the old school, what is it called? The odometer or whatever, the clock that counts the kilometers.
Yes.
The retweets were moving like kilometers on a clock like this. It was like, wow. It's like, oh, damn. Now it's 500 retweets, 1,000 retweets, 4,000 retweets. And it just blew up everywhere. I started trending worldwide. You know, people started now coming at me, reporting my accounts, suspicious activity, being warned. And then eventually it led to me being suspended off the platform. Then I get a call from head office at Sony. They're like, yo, we saw the whole entire thing with Kanye, whatever. Hey, it's gone up to head office. We're going to have to see how we move around that. And I could tell that, oh, damn, which means this whole entire thing is a real thing. So being part of the music industry and seeing how the music industry gives you access to people in power, you know, whether it be Kanye West saying George Bush doesn't care about black people. That was a controversial thing, you know, put him in the forefront at the Hurricane Katrina, relief and a FEMA fundraising telethon. And then eventually him calling out the whole music industry, calling out Taylor Swift, you know, those are things that I saw myself being able to do once I'd given myself my own platform, or once I'd risen to prominence enough myself personally. And so that was that moment during the pandemic when I was like, you know what, enough with all the pretending, enough with all the BS.
What were you pretending though?
That we're part of an industry that is not exploiting people. You know what I mean? We're part of a dream factory. Like, we make people's dreams come true, which is not the case. We actually manifest nightmares. You know, we take people's talent, we exploit it, we commodify it, and we dehumanize it to the extent that it does not enrich the creators of that artwork or those products, you know, anymore. It becomes a curse. Your gift becomes a curse. Anyone that becomes famous, makes music, has fans, ends up dying from the fact that they've sacrificed their personhood to fame, and that fame is used to make money, even at the expense of someone's well-being or their health.
But aren't you seeking fame by tweeting provocatively, saying that, I saw a tweet that you did recently. Mm-hmm. I think a lady called Tracy Lomax, who I happen to know, but she's very sort of progressive. Mm-hmm. And you retweeted her and said, I know, I'll something to the effect that I'll remember when we start feeding our pigs. Like,
yes.
The insinuation is we won't feed you.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't feed you to the pigs. No, we're safe.
She's a white woman. Like, I don't know. Yeah. What is this, like, trolling about white people so much?
No.
Not that I'm offended.
No.
I'm not a censored guy.
I get it.
Right.
But it wasn't
I think
the point was white people have been chopping up black workers, farm workers, chopping them up, you know. I learned this when I was a kid in primary school, that pigs can digest bone. I learned this from a white farmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's a famous movie called
why
Snatch,
would he?
right?
Well, I mean, as a 5-year-old, I don't know about Snatch. You know what I mean? I didn't know about Guy Ritchie then. You know?
Right. I'm sure you did.
As a 5-year-old.
Right.
As a 5-year-old.
Sure.
You understand? You understand? I only knew Brad Pitt from Meet Joe Black. Then, you know?
Yeah.
Not him boxing in a trailer park with some other Irish hippies. No, Guy Ritchie is one of my favorite directors as well. So I love all these movies, and Snatch is one of my favorites as well. So that whole entire thing was imprinted in me as like, oh damn, you can actually chop up a body. If you want to get rid of a body, you could chop it up and feed it to pigs and they will digest the bone. So I've always known that that's a thing. So when it starts coming out in the news that people are chopping up their farm workers, and there are not many white farm workers, right? So they're mostly black farm workers. So they're chopping up black people, feeding them to pigs. It's only natural to say, listen, once the eventual, whatever, white genocide, the retribution happens, you know, you'll be one of those white people that when we getting revenge, we'll spare you. You know, you won't become reverse pork, you know?
Right.
So,
I mean, are these deeply held beliefs? Like, do you think there's like some future event that's going to be very violent towards the white minority?
No. It'll never happen.
So are you doing it for the lols, as they used to say? Or are you doing
No, like you were saying about fame. So like,
yes. Are you doing this for fame?
I'm very much aware. Like I've made people famous, right?
Right.
So, I'm very much aware of the power of fame. And, the people that I made famous were kids from the township. Kids who wouldn't have an opportunity, you know, to get anywhere in life with their talents without my business acumen and my access to resources, network. I grew up in the richest square mile in Africa, Sandton City. That's my hometown,
yep.
You know? So all the businesses, everything is there. So I grew up with access. My childhood doctor, right? When I was a kid, when we were still in Diepkloof, his wife is one of the biggest pop stars in Africa, you know, the Princess of Africa, Mami Van Chaka Chaka, you know.
Yeah. She came to my school when I was in grade 2.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. Her husband made me cry. He gave me an injection in my bum.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he was my doctor.
Not because of his, not because of his beautiful voice, right?
I don't think he has a beautiful voice at all, but yeah, no, she does. So I grew up in that environment, as well. I'm around the same age as some of her younger sons. You know, we're in Bryanston, the area. When we first moved to the north, or Olivedale, when we first moved to the north, there were so many people that I had access to. I used to go to the Health and Racket Club when it was still the Health and Racket Club. And my mom used to go to gym, obviously. And there was a soccer player, late now, Mark Batchelor. And so Mark Batchelor, he used to go to the same gym as my mom, and then he'd look after like all the moms who'd come with their sons and kids. He'd look after everyone's kids
The kids, not the
You know what I mean?
moms.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
like-
we wouldn't know. And we were not going to find
I met him once or twice.
yeah. You kept him away from your mom, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, no. So Mark Batchelor was like that guy. So, he's a famous soccer player who's famous for playing for all three of the Soweto Giants. So he played for Morocco Swallows, he played for Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs. So he's famous across the board. Understanding that, knowing the different levels of fame, the different spheres of fame as well, I understood that, okay, damn, there's two streams of fame. There's people that are known as like legends, like your mom, Yvonne Chakajak, she's known widely. You know, because she's a legend, right? And there's people that are known because they're currently doing stuff, right? So your Mark Batchelor. But even with those people that are currently known and known for doing stuff, there's also different degrees to which they're famous. So there's another soccer player who used to, well, I guess he played for Bafana, Shoes Mushro. Actually scored in the World Cup, right?
1998.
Yeah, against Denmark, against Peter Schmeichel. I was 8 years old. So Shoes Mushro used to live in my neighborhood when he was still alive, and he used to take me to get my haircut. He used to pick me up at my house in his Porsche, and then take me to get my haircut. This is a guy who plays in the World Cup. This is the access that I've got. DJ Smoo, he used to mix and master his music for his record company, TS Records, 2 houses down from my parents' house at Chris Lathan's studio. So Chris Lathan's one of my neighbors. He used to mix and all of that. So he was dating Terry Peto. Terry Peto had just won, she was in a movie that won an Oscar, Tsotsi. Yes, with Presley, the late Presley Trinyakai, who just passed on recently, right? He pulls up to my house with a woman who's on an Oscar award winning movie and is also on The Bold and the Beautiful, which my mother watches religiously at 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on SABC1, right?
Yeah.
So can you see the level of access to fame that I've got from a young age?
Sure. So
when I was born,
you're a privileged kid, yeah.
When I was born, my sister was a model. TV presenter on KTV, actress on Soul City, which was one of the biggest sitcoms on SABC1 as well. So I was born knowing famous people, like my sister is famous. She's on TV. We went to Sharon Lee Primary for a year together. She was in grade 7 when the year it became grade 7. It was Planet 5 before then. And I was in grade 1. She was called over the intercom to go and act and do whatever it is that she does. So I've never sought fame. I've always known famous people.
Right.
And I've always been treated like I'm famous.
Mm-hmm.
You know? If your sister's famous in primary school, you're the famous brother of the famous sister. So you get treated like you're famous. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I've never had to seek it or seek it out. Now, with me seeking prominence currently, I knew that it was a necessary tool because I could not use proxies to get my message out like I did in the past. Like I was telling you, I've made people famous before. So I would be using proxies, artists, rappers. I guide them. I give them career guidance. I make them make certain content that is about certain subject matters, and then we spread the message, you know?
So what does all this have to do with, like, calling people like me Neanderthals? Like, I don't get it.
Just poking fun. So, in the same way,
right,
when I'm now making artists famous, right? I got this dilemma. I got this artist, right? But, damn it, only blacks know him. You know what I mean? And the thing is that it gives an advantage to an artist that works with me that's maybe from the township, okay? He's got the talent, but I can speak to white people that have got money. Mm-hmm. And I can say, okay, fine, we can create a brand partnership and, you know, all of us can benefit from it. So that's one thing. But he was completely unknown in the white sphere. And the reason why is because our music wasn't playing on the white radio stations. And the biggest challenge was getting on the white radio stations because that's where the white brand managers are listening to the white account managers or whoever it is. You know, you want someone when they're thinking about a new KFC campaign, there's a song that they were listening to on the radio on their way to their office at Ogilvy or wherever it is. You know, network, BBDO, whatever you call it, Huntler Scaris. You know, you want them to know of you, to be aware of you.
Sure.
And if the white people are not aware of your art, you're not commercially viable. So we needed a big troll. So not we, I, because I sat there by myself. I wrote a big open letter to 5FM. Obviously signed it with the artist's name that I was promoting. Cool. And then it became a big thing. Oh, how could you call a race card? How could you call 5FM racist? Then Tim Zacknell calls me in, Aisha Mohammed, who I ended up becoming colleagues with because she moved to marketing manager at Sony, and we ended up working together there. They call me into the office, with the artists I'm working in with at the time, and they want to have a discussion. Why would you call us racist and everything else? I was like, you don't play our music. You don't play hip-hop music, right? Which is youth music. You're a youth station. And the only reason you're not playing our hip-hop music is because we do it in our vernacular. Mm-hmm. And you're discriminating against us because we're black. So that is a rank racism. You can't tell us that we need to go and submit our music next door to Metro FM because their target audience is a ballpoint target or bullseye target audience is 30 years old. Our target audience is between the ages of 14 to 24. That's our target cohort. That is your target cohort as well. And therefore, you are the platform that we should be going to as a default. We should not be relying on YFM because they promote black artists. We should find ourselves represented within 5FM. That went so far because I sent that email. I put it up on social media, but I sent it to the board at SABC. And I sent it to Saudi's office as well. And Saudi was already working on, revolutionizing the SABC internally. So I knew that this would be something that was in his ambit and something that he'd get behind. So he got behind it and they put on a big lineup change. Put a whole lot of black faces on 5FM. DJ Waras got onto 5FM. That open letter, I got him a job on 5FM. Tando Tabete, I first met her at UJFM. She was an up-and-coming radio jock. She interviewed an artist that I work with, but she was super well prepared. Because when I'd promote an artist, if there's a DJ that's going to interview him tomorrow, the DJ is going to have a full bio. Not just the bio, certain breakdown of certain things, highlights, milestones, all the things that you need to talk about. Yeah. And she was the most prepared radio presenter that I'd seen actually do it. And she was still on a community radio station. Immediately after that interview, I told her, you're going to be one of the biggest voices on South African radio. That open letter gave her an opportunity to move from YFM, where she was still being a developed talent, straight onto mainstream 5FM. She's now a drive time host on 94.7. She got to that point at the age of 30, 31? No, even before that, yeah. Around the age of 30, 31.
Yeah.
I don't think Highveld Stereo, which is South Africa's biggest commercial radio station, has had a black woman hosting a drive time show at such a young age, having not hosted at such a big commercial station before. You must remember that when she was at 5FM, she was a co-host on a big show. She was with Roger Good on his show. So I knew that I know how to make moves to put people in positions of prominence and put them in positions of influence, right? Mm-hmm. But once I've put them there, I can't control what they do. I can't control what Tando Tabeto is doing right now and say, you need to now become more pro-black. You need to cut your weave off and start wearing an afro. You know what I mean?
So are you telling me basically through this life story of yours that controversy gets you what you want?
No, well, controversy gets you an audience. And once you've got the audience, if you've got a product that is useful to that audience, you can sell it to them.
So is your current controversy, are you building something that we don't know about or that you have built, and the controversy is target minorities?
No.
I'm trying to understand your method of thinking. So let me just tell you where I'm from.
Okay.
Right. I'm a free speech absolutist guy. That is really going to destroy the microphone, by the way. I'm a free speech guy, right?
Sorry.
I don't even think kill the boer necessarily should be hate speech. I'm really that sort of absolutist. So I understand why people want it, but that's a separate discussion. You went on, I think I saw the podcast with Jason Boo. You said, like, we have the weakest whites. I don't know.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's true.
I think on the contrary, I think they're much stronger here than most areas in the world.
No. I'm not saying like in South Africa. I'm just saying in terms of in the era of civilization.
Oh, yes. It's a dying civilization. We agree on that. I agree on that.
Yeah.
All right. So you said that. You said, like, human rights are for human beings.
And I was just trolling that. I was just trolling that.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I understand the trolling bit. Is that all that it is? Because the audience wants to know. Like, when I said I'm speaking to you on X, people were like just apoplectic with rage. Like, how dare you talk to this guy? I'm like, I'll talk to whoever the hell I want. It's my show.
Yeah.
I got free speech. Like, I don't care. Right? But I think people really want to know, like, are you someone that is never serious? Like, because there's a big difference between being like a joke and being someone that can be respected. And the quest for fame really determines which way of the line that you fall in. Like, I think you're already successful, you're already famous, you're already done well, as far as I understand. So, but people really want to know, especially in this political era, like, what do you actually, like, want like, people?
You know what? This is the thing. Is people need to understand something about me, right? I'm not your average Joe. You know? I didn't go to Tux FM and then go to 702 and then go to 5FM and become Gareth Cliff. I didn't start at YFM or start at Tembisa Radio and then go to YFM and then become DJ Smooth. You understand? I came from my dad's nutsack. And I've made myself.
I think we all have.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, after my dad's nutsack, there's been no organization that I've had to go through to make me a figure that's known by all of South Africa. That's all on me, all on my own. No institution, no political party, nothing. I built my own business from 12 years old. I built a record company at 12 years old, made it the number one record company in South Africa. I'm the number 1 selling, number 2 selling in South African music history. Like, you can't touch me. You know what I mean? I touched down in Kenya, people know me. I touched down in Zambia, people know me. I touched down in Malawi, people know me. I touched down in Senegal, people know me. Across the continent. You know what I mean? I touched down in New York City. I'm in the subway. I'm taking pictures. People know me. You know? So that is very difficult to understand because everyone else that they know from a certain place. They've got a reference point. Oh, I knew him from KTV. Oh, that's the guy from CakeNet. Oh, that's the guy that was on $7 or stuff like that. No. Me, completely social media. And I'm a native on social media. So from the MySpace days, that's where I started. Facebook eventing, where I became a club promoter when I was still a teenager, you know, in high school, hosting parties with thousands of people. I did concerts after parties for 50 Cent, the rapper, international rapper. You know what I mean? I was promoting his after party in the middle of doing high school. I left my school, went to Lanseria Airport, did a press conference with 50 Cent, then went back to my matric class with everybody else, you know?
Right.
You can't compare that. And even in that interview, that press conference with 50 Cent, you know, because I was a young up and coming hip hop producer at the time, I asked him, how do we ever make it as South Africans onto the world stage, like where we become important and international artists want to collaborate with us and et cetera, et cetera. And he gave me like the blueprint. It's like, yo, you need to be so big in your own market, and your market needs to be so big that we need to work with you to get access to your market and to ensure that, you know, it's something meaningful. Yeah. So that's when I started doing the numbers and understanding, okay, how big does our market need to be for us to have something to offer for the US market, right? So from being able to do that to then bringing Rick Ross to the country, you know what I mean? Not to the country to come do big concerts. No, to come to the country to do a small little show, to walk around the township, right? What we choose on our own. You know what I mean? Big international stars. Taking international stars to winning awards at the BET Awards. You know what I mean? Discovering stars that are now Grammy Award winners. You know what I mean? The top stars winning, whether it be from Grammys, American Music Awards or whatever. You know what I mean? All of that I've been able to do by understanding the trajectory and the potential trajectory of the market that I was working in. And that's in the culture market in South Africa. And the way in which I figured that out is that I used just a normal basic demographic study. I looked at the fact that the American music market was dominating the world. And I mean, it's even more dominant now, in the streaming era. You know, it's doubled its dominance, whereas the consumption of American music was 20% of all music, in the CD era. And now it's at 33% of all music. In fact, more, it's 34% of all music.
In the streaming era.
In the streaming era.
Yeah.
And, in terms of the music that's consumed in the streaming era, streaming consumption has increased music consumption by 80% and increased American music consumption by 40%. So that's how it got from that 20 to that 34% dominance within the streaming era. So I knew that South Africa has got potential, right? Because the African American music market really dominated in terms of trends. In America. So all the latest genres, whatever it is, whether it be from rock and roll, started as an African-American genre, country music, blues, all the way to R&B and to modern pop, started as African-American music genres. African-Americans are 15 to 17% of the population in the United States. At the time that we started, there were like 35 million of them. Almost as many 35 million black South Africans at the time. Mm-hmm. So now we're at 50 million, they're at 47 million. So it's still similar numbers, right? And I thought to myself, South Africa can challenge globally or become one of the biggest music markets globally if we work on our domestic market and we empower it and we keep up with the production trends internationally. The easiest way to do that was through hip hop, because hip hop digitized the music production. We didn't need the big studios, right? And we're all globally using the same equipment.
Like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what does that have to do with the question I posed? Like 15 minutes ago. Like, I understand this is your bread and butter, right?
No.
Like, you're the expert in this. I fully understand that.
So
why does attacking minorities work in this equation that you're spelling out here?
Yeah, so I'm getting to that. So okay. I understand how to influence culture.
Right.
Intrinsically. You know what I mean? I know South Africa like the back of my hand. If you look at the back of my hand, if you can see it on the camera, it's got lots of freckles. Okay, well, you can't see them because they're not contrasting that well. The contrast is not that good, but I got lots of freckles. So I know South Africa like the back of my hand. And to make music that resonates, to make a song like Ingutu and call it good means that I know that this is something that black people know, right? But I call it good so that white people can relate with it, even if they can't understand the lyric of the song. When good plays and the Blue Bulls are playing against whatever team, the whole of Loftus is shaking.
Yeah.
You understand? That's me knowing music that can shake Loftus, that can shake Ellis Park, that can shake the Cheetah Stadium, the Vodacom, whatever, in Free State, you know? Because I understand the same thing that the people that market the Springboks understand, is that the brand of the Springboks is about how many stadiums it fills. Same thing with the brand of my music, is how many stadiums it fills. Mm-hmm. So I can make music that can play at the Derby, Pirates versus Chiefs, halftime, and the whole 85,000 crowd is singing along to words I wrote on a piece of paper. You understand? That's intrinsically tapping in to someone's source, to someone's essence. It's making sure that they can resonate with that. And also be able to do that in my black language and have white people resonate with it. Very, very difficult to do.
Well, I think Mendoza did it like in the year 2000 or something.
You understand what I'm saying? You understand?
That was like the breakthrough, I think, where it was like a Vernac song.
Yeah,
that sort of
but that's Gabby LaRue.
Understood.
That's Gabby LaRue. It was a white producer.
Oh, right.
Yeah, one of my mentors, Gabby LaRue.
Okay.
Yeah. So, a white producer. There was also another one, D-Rex, another white producer. So that's what they're doing. They were playing the same instrumentals or music production that was popping in the rave clubs where the white kids were going to, right? And they were having the kids that were rapping on the songs that are popping off at the bashes, which the black kids were going to. And you put that together, you got black and white kids coming together.
Right.
Very simple.
Is that what you want?
That's exactly what I've been doing my entire career.
Okay.
And that's because I was taught by people like Mendoza. You know what I mean? I wrote for Mendoza. Yeah, a legend for me, for black kids, white kids, all of us. You know what I mean? So the trolling is just about getting the attention, right? But there's a bigger agenda, because I know that the few people that I may piss off are too stupid to understand where I'm going anyway. I'm just saying, because if they're pissed off, they're not smart enough to understand the troll from, an actual genuine attack, then they're not smart enough to understand where I'm going. But I don't need them there. I just need a small enough cohort of us young, upwardly mobile South Africans, black, white, Indian, colored, all of us mixed together to move this country forward. Why? Because I know that when my dad sees a white man, right, he sees bus. My dad has had white employees since I was a kid. You know what I mean? My dad owns a construction company. So, my dad's first architect, Jack Bond, is a British guy. He lives in Hartbeespoort, or British, which right by Hartbeespoort, right? Big, mustache guy, right? Walks into the house, kisses everyone on the lips, kisses my mom on the lips, kisses everybody on the lips. It's British. You're French.
we do it on the cheek.
No. You guys love kisses.
Afrikaners do it on the lips.
But I mean, you're French. You're
French.
Yeah, you made the Afrikaners.
Yeah. Well, some of them.
Yeah, the Huguenots, yes.
The best ones.
So the Duplessis, the Leroux.
The Leroux, correct. So I think it's an interesting thing. Your father seems like a successful guy who's had white. But you said he's had white employees for like the longest time. But you still think, psychologically, he still sees himself as sort of inferior to them.
Yeah, he's always. Because that's how he was raised. That's what he was born into.
So is your music an attempt to decolonize that idea? Not to decolonize it, but to take it away from people?
No, not for my father.
Right.
No, I've given up on them. They're lost causes.
Oh, right.
They're old.
Sure.
Our job is to make sure that they've got a comfortable retirement. You know what I mean? Give them a nice holiday home in Zanin. And, stuff that's what we should be doing. You know what I mean? So that one day when we have kids, we can send them up to boarding school in Zanin and they can be decent human beings. Because you can't get any of that around here. If you live in Cape Town, you want to send your kids to Paul Girls, you know what I mean? Paul Girls is a very nice, La Rochelle, also very nice. You take your daughters there, you know what I mean? You take your sons to KZN, the Midlands, to nice.
Hilton, Michael House.
Those are the things that we should be looking towards. Yeah. But we need to only get there once we figure out what we're doing in our economic centers. And our economic centers are the places that bring us all together. Different tribes, different nationalities, different languages, you know what I mean? Even different, whether it be foreigners, whether it be locals, naturalized citizens, whatever, we all come together in these urban centers. And what we should be doing is that we should be ensuring that our urban centers are places where we are able to produce a surplus, which is then invested back into our rural homelands. Why do we do it like that? Because as Africans, and the native South Africans in particular, right, we all have rural homelands everywhere outside of the city centers. And because of the urbanizations of the centers, right, we cannot practice our culture properly within,
Well, I think no one can.
Nobody,
the essence of, like when people say, like the corporate job, like just strips away culture. It strips away everything.
Yeah,
like
everybody's culture,
You're a cog in an economic machine in Sandton. Like, no one cares. We have like Bride Day or whatever bullshit.
So what makes it worth it?
Oh, the cash, I assume.
No, retirement back to your homeland, retirement back to your culture and everything else. So we're not giving people that second option. We're making them die in this whitewashed corporate kleptocracy where everybody's trying to steal an opportunity from the next person. You're trying to get a promotion over your colleague, or you're trying to convince your boss to give you a higher raise than someone else, or you're trying to convince your boss that you can do the job of 3 managers so he can fire them. And you know what I mean? That's the type of thing, and we're not working together. But if we had I guess a unified idea or ideal for where we want to be post-work, our post-work life. If that was like the same way the Americans have got the American dream.
Sure.
If we had like the South African dream, and the South African dream is about your retirement, then the sacrifices that you're making in your work life are worthwhile. Then you are building towards something as well that will not need you to, I guess, trade your time.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I mean, but looking at South Africa right now, you would think that the most important thing is, just to get a job, right? I mean, most people just...
Why?
Most people just don't have those.
Why do I need a job? I don't have a job.
No, not you.
No, I'm just saying I don't have a job.
But
why should I need a job?
If you're a poor person from the rural area.
Why would I be poor?
Chances
in Africa, at home. My ancestors, I know all 13 generations of my grandfather's names.
Sure.
Why am I poor? Why do I need a job?
No, but I'm not talking about you.
No, but I'm just saying any native, why would we need a job? We were here before
if I say native, I get cancelled. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
But I'm just saying, like, we've been here for generations.
Sure.
You know what I mean? We've been here before the colonization, before industrialization and all those things. And all of a sudden now, because we're an industrial country, now we need jobs to serve this industry. We don't need to serve this industry. We don't need to. You look at, just look at things like, I look at my dad's history, right? So my dad, where he's from, is close to Tzaneen, right? My grandfather had a lineage within the Baloyi royal house, right? And there was conflict. Back in the days, my grandfather was born in 1909. So a year before the Union of South Africa,
yes.
Even. So there was conflict back in that time, and then they ended up having to move him and some of his brothers. They were scattered. His other brothers then got put into this new colonial royal house construct, right? Subject to the government at the time. My grandfather and his brothers rebelled against that. They didn't want to follow that, and they didn't want to be indoctrinated. They didn't want their wives to be taken to these schools that they wanted their wives to be taken to. They didn't. They went to school, obviously, because the missions and the British colonizers, when they came up, wanted to educate the native nobility. So my grandfather,
of course, educate the elites.
Yeah. So like, I met my grandfather once, right? Because he ended up having beef with my dad, and whatever the case may be, they had like the little thing. So the day I met him, and I was shocked that he knew how to speak English, because my grandmother didn't know how to speak English. She wasn't educated at all. So that whole entire situation with my family and where it came from, right, put us in poverty. And my dad would always tell me that they grew up poor. He'd take me back to his ancestral homeland. He'd be like, yeah, it's a desert. Nothing grows there. But every time we drive there, you see these gigantic farms. There's like this other farm. I think it's the CJL farm. It stretches from Tzaneen to Giyani, I think, which is like maybe 40 or 50 kilometers. Just one farm. One farm. Right next to that farm is all our villages. Mm-hmm. We live in abject poverty because our villages have been desertified. All the water is being pulled, drained, and diverted out of our villages and into the reservoirs and the dams. Tzaneen Dam is one of the biggest culprits that impoverished us. And then it is only now, 35 years old, I go to my ancestral homeland, to my dad's homeland, and I realize why we were poor, why we've been poor. They didn't have water. They could not get involved in agriculture. They couldn't grow their own food. They couldn't feed themselves. They couldn't do anything. And now they had to be subjects to this industrial capital system. My dad needed to move down from Tzaneen, his homeland, move down to Joburg, where fortunately for him, he met a Joburg girl and married up into relative privilege. Now we're here. Now that we're here, it's like, what is our duty? Is our duty to just pick up from where our parents left off, or to fix the things that kept our parents in poverty, so that, the rest of us, our cousins, our nieces and nephews who are still in that environment, don't get to reproduce the poverty, that...
I agree with that sentiment, but I think we'll fundamentally disagree about what causes poverty, I would think. Like, what
causes poverty is lack of water. That is it. It's a very simple thing. Very simple thing. If you don't have water, you're poor.
So am I thinking too much like a capitalist in terms of GDP growth and jobs and all that?
GDP doesn't matter.
Solves.
You don't eat GDP.
No, but GDP helps you feed yourself.
If you grow your own food,
Sure.
you don't contribute to GDP in any way.
I fully agree.
So
There's
therefore,
lots of stuff that doesn't contribute to GDP, but
so
if you are a subsistence farmer, I don't think that should be like the epitome of what people actually want. And I think if you look at the survey data around South Africans generally, like they don't want to be subsistence farmers. Subsistence farming is actually quite difficult. Like it's something that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, doesn't make much money, it's subject to weather. I think people do want cash.
Yeah, but the
they
thing
do
is that
want a good education. They do want safety. They do want, you don't think any of that matters?
no, none of it matters.
Really?
What matters is having lots of kids. That is it. People want to be able to have lots of kids, and they want their kids to be fed whenever they cry. That is it. It's that simple. People don't want any of these complicated things, because these complicated things about this industrial economy that we're in, and about competing, and about having 10,000 McDonald's. Right?
No, so I think there's a conflation here. I'm not for like this, what the left calls neoliberalism, right? It's like the exportation of American corporations around the world. So there's a McDonald's in Kabul. No, like what I'm saying is a market in a country can not reshape, can define that society for years to come, right? So if you have a Pick and Pay that opens up in the middle of the township, it destroys the spaza shops.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
But the spaza shops are the sort of cultural nodes of that township.
I guess.
The church as well.
The distributors,
the car wash as well, etc., etc. So if a corporation comes in, you got macro coming into the middle of whatever, deep throat, then you destroy the local economy. And that's a fuck up.
Well,
Right?
the thing is that how is macro coming in? Is macro coming in as in we're going to be a wholesale distributor for the small producers that produce goods within this community?
No, of course
Or
not.
are we going to be an importer of goods from global markets, and then we're going to be the first distributor or the wholesale distributor to other distributors who then do whatever it is, last mile or whatever.
No, or they're just going to sell directly to customers.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that we're overcomplicating it when we think of it like that. That's why I take it back to the basics of water. Water is all you need.
But water's
Egypt. Egypt, huge country, huge desert.
Yeah.
The Sahara Desert, right? 130 million people live along the water, along the river. Just that small little river, the Nile,
Of course.
that stretches across the country. All 130 million people live along that river. Everything else is desert.
Sure.
So there's no minerals that they're getting from the ground or anything of the sort. All they had was water, and they had wealth. They were able to build one of the, greatest civilizations of all time just because they had water, nothing else. No gold, no copper, no tantalum, whatever, and antimonium, whatever you may call it. All they had was water. So if we just start with the water, if we can go to our rural villages, right, wherever the people are, and say, let us provide them with water. Once they've got water, they can decide whether they can do subsistence farming, or they can do communal farming, or they can grow it and say, oh, we've got such a surplus, let's put it onto the markets and then expand into commercial farming. But that starts with them having water.
Sure.
So the access to the water is the most important thing, because right now our problem in this country is that we've got political parties that are able to troll people. The same way I troll, the EFF trolls. So how does the EFF troll? We want land, jobs now. Land means not needing jobs. If I've got land, I don't need jobs. So you can't have it's an oxymoron.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I would agree.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron. Once I've got enough land, why do I need jobs? I've got land. You know what I mean?
Do you think there's land hunger?
We don't have land hunger. We have water shortages. The people don't have water. Those people that have got some land, they can't do anything with it because they've got no water. And therefore, now that land that they've got is useless. And that's why it's so easy for them to sell. The small scale farmers that are being given little parcels of land, right, are being given parcels of land without access to water. So those small little parcels of land, the agricultural projects that go onto that land, they end up failing because they don't have access to water.
But that's an easy thing. But here's the thing.
Okay.
This is easy to solve.
Yes, it is.
If we had a capable state or whatever they call
No,
it.
just political will.
Like water is not really an issue, right? But I do think there's a lot of other issues that are. Water is very important, don't get me.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff that we can do that's very simple that can actually help people.
Like what?
Dramatically. Get foreign direct investment, make sure...
No.
You don't care about any of that.
No, I don't want foreign direct investment. There's no investment that comes without strings. South Africa
But
needs...
of course there's strings. But I mean, if you have people coming in with... This is how China built their economy.
China was isolated first. China was isolated first.
Self-imposed isolation.
That's what we need. First. Why?
We had that. It was called apartheid.
No. That's not self-imposed. That was minority imposed.
We had sanctions on everything. That's why we built, well, that's why they built these self-sufficient organizations like ISCOR and Arms Corps.
They weren't self-sufficient.
They were meant, they were meant to replace the imports that we couldn't have due to sanctions.
No. We had imports. They were just done undercover.
No, sure, but not...
We had a company like Glencore. No! What do you mean? Glencore is one of the biggest mineral traders in the world. It's a South African company.
Sure, now.
So it's not. It's always been. Why? Because it was used to mask the sanctions-busting efforts of the apartheid government. Glencore was importing sanctioned Russian oil.
Sure.
And pretending it comes from Venezuela. You understand what I'm saying? So swapping it out. Glencore, all our minerals right now are traded and marketed by Glencore. So it's one of the biggest companies in the world, based off the fact that South Africa is one of the most lucrative mining nations in the world as well.
It was.
You know, it's
not anymore.
Okay.
Due to policy, not because we lack the thing.
No. I disagree with that. The propaganda is that it was. Not anymore. That's the propaganda.
Yeah,
the truth of the matter is that we dominate the world in many critical minerals, your platinum group metals and everything else. And plus, 40% of the world's gold reserves were mined on our soil or under our soil. So 40% of the world's gold, right? The what is it? The reserve asset of last resort, right? 40% of it comes from South Africa. That means that the Empire State Building was built with our money. That means Washington, D.C. was built with our money. Because if that was built through money that they were able to get from the rich British crown, then it means that it came from here. The World War I was funded with our gold. World War II was funded with South African gold. And that's why there were so many concessions after World War II. Where the Americans came here and helped build up the National Party government, which was a coalition government for 24 years. And that coalition government started with what? Started with Barry Herzog, the Rand Rebellion, unions on the mines and all of that sorts of stuff. Fighting for jobs, lobbying for jobs.
Correct.
Leftist socialist politics, right?
Workers unite for a white South Africa.
That
was a sign at the Rand Revolt in 1922, and no one on the left wants to acknowledge that the origins of the apartheid system was a socialist representation of white workers in the labor force because they were scared of black workers.
Well, I don't think they were scared of black workers.
They were. No. Come on. They would come in, undercut them. The same work.
That's not fear.
Half.
It's knowing that you are outnumbered.
It's complete fear.
No. Okay. Well, I guess you can know that someone can defeat you.
Sure.
It's like if I see Mike Tyson, right? I'm not gonna fear him, but I know he can clap me. I know that.
I'm sure you can.
I'm just not gonna start something with him because I know he can clap me. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that I fear him. It's just that I know that he can beat me up. So it's a knowledge. So. Also, the white workers who were a minority at the time, right? They knew that they could be replaced. Number one, you must understand that those white workers that you're looking at, right? Majority of them are Afrikaners, right? The Afrikaners have got a serious dilemma in that their nation dumped them here. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, they created a new identity.
No, they didn't create a new identity. They were left here as refugees, right? So the Dutch Empire, Empire collapsed.
Yes.
The British took it over. They fought, the British took over, and then the Dutch fought back, gained ascendancy, but by 1806, the British took it back, and it never went back to the Dutch ever again. Correct. So now what happens with those, the Dutch or the then Dutch settlers, right? Not all of them are homogenous groups. Not all of them come from the Dutch elites. A lot of them were Belgian, Flemish, indentured servants. They were like the slaves of that era.
Religious persecution.
Yes, you understand what I'm saying? So now they come into this place, right, we're building up this new dream for ourselves, right? And then the people that sent us here, the people that are bankrolling our movement here, they are now out of power. So we've got no one to defend us, no one to fight for us, right? So we're refugees. So they come with that fear of being refugees. It's got nothing to do with them having a fear of the natives. Because also, when you look at the natives, yes, there was conflicts with the native groups, right? But the only people that they went to war with were the British. The only people that put them in concentration camps were the British. There were no Zulus putting words.
Or vice versa, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
In fact, they actually got on quite a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only known war killers are the British. You understand?
Well, Zulus at one time. Yeah.
No. They didn't. No.
Piet Retief got murdered by Zingan.
Okay. Piet Retief. Piet Retief was not on his native land. If I was gallivanting somewhere in the Netherlands and the king of the Netherlands there chopped my head off, I deserved it. Why am I in foreign land? I'm trespassing.
Well, he went to Dingaan with an offer.
Yeah, but either way, the same Dingaan that killed his brother. Yeah, I went to go to the guy who killed his own brother, and I asked him for loyalty.
So I understand. So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, fair enough.
So Piet Retief was not
essence,
the smartest guy.
I think there has been for quite a while, and this is going to be super controversial. There's been a general respect between sort of the white minority in South Africa and the various tribes in South Africa as well.
Or nations. Let's call them nations.
Let's call them nations.
Yeah,
That's actually a much better term for it.
Yeah.
Is that something that you want to cultivate again? Like, is this a goal of yours?
What do you mean?
Cultivate respect between the nations of South Africa.
Yes, very much so. Like, very much so. I just feel like the problem with South Africa is that unless you make them upset, they don't really care about you. So if I come there and I make everyone happy, they're not going to hear me. So I need to create the awareness first. And once I've got the awareness, that's when the influence can come in. So now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, fine. My name has got some sort of ubiquity amongst South Africans, whether they're black, white, Indian, colored, they all know me. You know what I mean? If you're a white South African, yeah, he's the guy that called us Neanderthals or whatever. Yeah. If you're a colored South African, yeah, here's the guy that, called out the guys that killed AKA. You know what I mean? If you're a black South African, oh, this guy is a hip hop music legend or whatever. So everyone's got a point in which they identify me as and they know me, from.
So what are you going to do with all that fame or infamy? Well, what is it that you
make more people famous? Give an influence.
To do what?
So that we can continue this discourse. So what you're saying, Rob doing right now, right? Going on podcast, but he's doing it in the States, right? I've done it in South Africa. So I've gone to a whole lot of podcasts, especially a lot of black podcasts, small guys who are unmonetizable. The thing that I do is that it's fine. I don't care if you've got 500 subscribers. I don't care if no one watches your thing. I'm going to come to your thing. I'll drive to your house. I'll buy myself whatever I need to buy, and you'll have 10,000 viewers, and you'll be able to start making money after I leave. And then from then on, it's up to you how you take it forward. Yeah. So once we bring or we mainstream more of these voices outside of the mainstream media, then we can disempower the mainstream media to the extent that we actually have a voice. The public actually has a voice. Why? Because there's so many small voices of people that have a community that they speak to, that resonates, that they've got a voice that they braai with, you know what I mean, that they have conversations with, and now they're bringing them to the public discourse instead of this curated message that's coming from corporate media.
So I agree with you completely. And I think the real sort of free flow of ideas comes outside of that.
I don't have a plan after that, though.
Corporate media space. But I mean, so what? So you want to bring people together to have more discourse?
I want to create a gigantic media industry. So the same thing, like I was saying with the music, right? So I was able to see what they were able to get right in America, right? Get that right within the South African market, right? And then also get right our own identity, so that we could also have a dominant sound that we could export to the world. So I was able to do that. So now I'm doing the same thing within the podcasting space. It's the same metrics. It works just in the same way as music does. You listen to it on streaming platforms. So if I was able to get it right from the music space, streaming, whatever, all the way to film, because we do music videos and everything else, I'm able to do the same thing within the podcasting space in South Africa. Now, why does South Africa have the potential to compete with America within the podcasting space? Because the same things that we've got similarities with from the music perspective are the same things. We've got similarities from the podcasting perspective, apart from the fact that, we don't have a predominantly white population, but we've got a big enough white population, right? And especially a predominantly English-speaking white population for us to compete within the entire Anglosphere, right?
Right.
So now when you're looking at what's how we're competing within the Anglosphere, right? This is important for someone like you. If you look at the music space, what I told you earlier is that from 20% of the music being consumed in the world being American to over 34% of the music being American, right? The growth of streaming consumption by 80% leading to a 40% growth in American music consumption, right? Is the same thing that can happen within the podcasting space. Sure. So America leads the podcasting space. You got your Joe Rogans and everything else, right? Now, why is it that other nations or other markets are unable to compete with America? Why? It's because America, number one, has got so much content and we're so used to watching them, and they've got so many compelling stories that they've told, right? Is that, it's a no-brainer. You can just scroll on to American content and then it's like an endless scroll. It'll just keep recommending. Yeah. We need to do the same thing in South Africa, right? So that we can also have a share of the market. We've done a sort of successful South African invasion in Europe and the UK with our new music. There's, Amapiano, the dance music that's coming in. But it hasn't been as successful within the US market, per se, because it's dominated by the African diaspora, so to speak, right? Same thing within Europe. It's also dominated by the African diaspora, but the reason why it's not as successful is because America has got its own black audience, African Americans. They don't care about what's happening in the African diaspora. They've got their own black culture that they care about, and that's what they want. And that's the mainstream. Wow. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So we don't have that opportunity to grow within that space unless we then get them to have a keen interest in Africa and African content. So that's what we're doing. The way we do that is by telling our stories. Now, our narrative arc is much broader and wider than America's, right? We've got our native history. You know what I mean? We've got our colonial history, our pre-colonial history in native history. We've got our post-colonial history. We've got, our
segregated history,
the 20th century history. We've got now our new 21st century, democratic dispensation history, us hosting World Cups and things like that. And also being a story that fascinates the world. It fascinates the entire world. Like the South African story fascinates the world. So much about South Africa is so unique, and so much about the rest of the world can be found in South Africa that we are able to reflect parts of the world to everywhere in the world. Like, you know what I mean?
I actually agree with you. Like,
with the best Italian food,
completely on.
With the best French baguettes,
but also
with the best, you name it.
Also, like the downsides of South Africa and the stuff that we've done and the policies we've chosen. Like the rest of the world are going to be. There's a sort of what's called a competency crisis happening. So now where you're going to see like load shedding in like England, right? Like that's close to it. Yeah. Same as in France just recently.
Well, I mean,
Portugal and
Texas
Spain.
had it.
Yeah, Texas had it as well. So there's a lot of lessons other people can learn in terms of what not to do, but there's also a few lessons in terms of how to deal with it. Like I think we are quite a resilient place, and I do think we are fascinating because we have the only. You might disagree on this, but we have the only white tribe of Africa living here. Whether they.
Well, you can call them a nation. The thing is that when you call them a tribe, it's a nation. So whether you see whether they're indigenous or not, they've naturalized and they've got a nationhood.
Yes. But they belong here, right?
So that's a nation.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So we move from our tribal, feudal history to national identities where we have a Zulu nation, a Xhosa nation, a Tsonga nation, a Venda nation, a Pedi, Tswana, you name it. In the nation, we've got an Afrikaner nation, The problem though with the Afrikaners is that their nation is also racially divided. So you've got the white Afrikaner nation, and then you've got the black Afrikaner nation. So the black Afrikaner nation is everyone that sees themselves as an Afrikaans-speaking person as the first language, right?
Yeah.
Black, white, colored. I mean, black and colored, right? And then you've got the solely white speaking Afrikaners. And the fact that those two are divided makes it very difficult for us to actually give into any calls or requests for self-determination of an Afrikaner nationhood, because already those calls come from one section of it, which is mainly the white section of the Afrikaner community, and not so much from the other ones.
So I do think that a lot of the Afrikaners that you mentioned, like the white Afrikaners, they see like the language they speak as Afrikaners, but culturally they are white Afrikaners. Like I don't think culturally a Sotho Afrikaans speaker will see themselves as an Afrikaner. They just speak the language.
No.
Same as a colored. I think a colored is a particular identity.
No.
Right?
Afrikaners are the most African whites. Afrikaners call older people. That's Tani.
Yes.
That's not whatever her name is. If I was English, if I was an English kid, that lady over there, I don't know, she might be 40, 50 or something, right? She's Tani, whatever. If her name was Judith and I was an English kid, I'd call her Judith. You understand? So Afrikaners culturally are black. Not only culturally, just from historically.
Yes.
If you've been oppressed, you're part of the black peoples, because the blacks are the formerly oppressed peoples, right? So the Afrikaners have been oppressed. They've been put in concentration camps. Therefore, they're black. They've got an oppression history.
Okay. Well, I think every tribe in the world has had some form of oppression history.
Well, I mean,
Irish, the Scots.
If the Irish are not here, they're not, Irish are not here.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. The British came here and they conquered.
Right.
They weren't conquered. You understand? So they don't have the blackness. They didn't have the blackness. Whereas the Irish have got the blackness. So the Irish, they're black. So the Irish where's this? In New York, New Amsterdam. Yeah. When it was still New Amsterdam, you know what I mean? They had concentration camps for the Irish workers and everything else, you know, and they ended up fighting with the African American slaves who'd moved up from the South when they were moving north, you know,
for the Jews?
For the jobs, you know. So all of us have got a history of oppression that blackens us.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean like it blackens us?
I'm talking about the native South Africans and the Afrikaners.
Sure. So they share a
blackness as in solidarity within struggle, as in formerly oppressed nations or formerly oppressed people. Okay. That's what I mean by black.
Okay.
And not as in like color or appearance, because neither of us are black anyway.
Sure.
But just if you use that black as a blanket term, because I also don't refer to myself as a black person, like generally, you know what I mean? Colloquially, yes, you can see me as a black person, but I'm a Tsonga man. You know what I mean? That's my nationhood.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I'm a Tsonga man of South African nationality.
So, if Afrikaners are black, as you say, because they are sort of a former oppressed people, what does that mean for them? Like, what do you want them to
They're the only ones
do with that?
No. They need to acknowledge that
and
understand that there are other black people, right, that also need their reparations. The same way the Afrikaners got their reparations. The same way Queen Victoria gave them a leg up after they'd been oppressed, after they'd been kept in concentration camps. They need their reparations. And therefore, they should be the first ones to say, listen, if we got our reparations as Afrikaners, right, to help us settle properly and build ourselves up, you know, and build up some dignity, then the same thing needs to happen for the native black oppressed people. But also there needs to be a distinction, because not all natives were oppressed in the same way.
Sure.
There's the
of course
native elites who don't deserve anything because they've already got everything. They're still getting, and they're the ones who are oppressing us right now.
But with all these talks of reparations, I find it, I think it's a very difficult subject.
Why?
For a variety of things. Not because I don't think it should or shouldn't happen. I'm just thinking like very few of us were alive back then. For example, in America, like reparation comes up from time to time. How much percentage of the population in America owned slaves at any given time?
Okay. So
1.6%.
So
such a small minority.
Irrelevant.
How do we figure out who has to pay what?
That is irrelevant.
Right.
Because the gold that was mined is still alive today. The currency that was mined, whether there were 10,000 people back then and there's 10 million now, the money, the value of the global economy is still there.
Yeah.
And the people who it was extracted from need to get their due. That value is still there.
But from where? From who? From how?
What do you mean from where? From the people that collect the value. Whether it be the banks, whether it be the Federal Reserves, whether it be the states, everything else, whether we need sovereign wealth funds or anything. My thing is this, is that why is it everyone deserves reparations? The Jews, the Afrikaners, the Armenians, the Bosnians, the Serbs, you name them. Everyone deserves reparations except for the Africans.
So I don't think they do not or do deserve it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denying what should have.
No, but I'm just saying there's always excuses when it comes to why can't we just say, let's give the black people the reparations. Now, the problem is this, is that we don't want to give the black people reparations. So then what do we come up with? We come up with BEE. And BEE now becomes a form of reparations. Right?
Yes.
But it becomes a form of reparations where it's a form of reparations where these people that are being given reparations are being given an opportunity to participate in an economy they were excluded from participating in, with people who've exploited the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that there's no more opportunity to exploit.
So I think a lot of people would say, I think Africa has received since 1950 $1 trillion in aid from the Western countries.
And
Is that not a form of reparations?
how much are they extracted? 40% of the world's gold reserves came from South Africa. That is much more than $1 trillion.
So
That was much more than $1 trillion.
Separate though.
No, it's not separate, because that aid comes so that they can lubricate their extraction of our resources.
So at what stage do we hold African leaders responsible for not investing in stuff that makes life easier for people?
We don't have African leaders. We're proxies that were brought in by the Crown, brought in by the Americans, brought in by the European powers. All our powers are brought in by European powers.
So, yeah. So you say Africa has never been independent?
Never.
Still to this day?
To this day. Anytime we've had someone who's tried to be independent, they got killed.
Like Lumumba. As in
Killed. Killed, all of them. Zuma. Character assassinated. The best president South Africa has ever had in its history. Survived an investment strike. Trillions of rands sitting in the biggest corporations, not being reinvested into this economy just to spite him.
Yeah. I actually spoke to someone and the biggest thing he said was, so we're not pro or anti-Zuma by any means. I would love to speak to him on a podcast, but
Yeah, please.
I don't think he'll talk to me.
No, he will. No, he will.
I'm trying my best.
Really?
But
I'll put you in touch with some guy.
No, cheers. Thank you. But what this guy told me was the biggest issue Zuma had was, as soon as he became the president, he had a braai with Steve Hofmeyr. They discussed mutual things. The corporations treated him like absolute shit.
Yeah.
They didn't
Rupert wouldn't speak to him.
They wouldn't even have lunch with him, nothing. And that allowed everyone else who wanted to join to come and create this like sort of new black elites. So like that's when like what they would call tenderpreneurs at the time, and like the Guptas and things like that. Because corporate South Africa didn't speak to Jacob Zuma, it was impossible to build a coalition on sort of funding and policy. So
Well, they did that on purpose.
Other people filled in that void. So that's what I'm saying. The corporates did it on purpose. So I think it was quite hobbled from the beginning.
Even before the beginning. So the corporates didn't support his Polokwane 2008 campaign. And that was it. And the corporates didn't support him because they supported Thabo Mbeki and whoever else he wanted to succeed him. So Thabo Mbeki had captured the entire South African economy. By the time Mandela stepped away, Thabo Mbeki captured everything. He controlled everything. He had his people placed in all our pension funds, our asset managers. I mean, the biggest asset manager has got over 3 trillion rands sitting there. The PIC is controlled by Thabo Mbeki to this day. It's controlled by his wife to this day. You know what I mean? They do things that his wife approves to this day. So Thabo Mbeki literally destroyed South Africa. Literally.
So
not because of inaction, because it was his strategy. Thabo Mbeki's arrogance and his Xhosa tribal superiority. And it's a Xhosa thing, and I can speak on it because I've got Xhosa ancestry, right? The Xhosa people think that they are the colonial clerks. Right?
Yeah.
They think they're the most colonial. They're the ones who are supposed to be in charge. You know what I mean? Mandela comes from their nation. He's the father of the nation, and therefore, de facto, they're the ones who are supposed to be ruling this country. And then you get this Zulu savage, this mshini wielding.
That's why I like him, to be honest.
This mshini wielding Nzula from Nkandla, right? And then you get that guy.
Yeah.
And then these Xhosas are like, no, damn it, he'll never be as good as Mbeki. And then all of a sudden, you've got the second biggest nation out of the black nations turned off by a Zulu leader who has never shown loyalty to his own tribe to the extent where you can say that he turned the ANC into a Zulu party.
You're saying he didn't do that?
He didn't.
No, he didn't.
You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
So hold on. If Zuma could be in charge of the ANC for 10 years, come on, I'm 100% Zulu boy. And then his successor is Venda, the smallest tribe up there in Limpopo.
Yes.
You can't say that this guy took the ANC and made it a Zulu thing. Now you look at Zuma effect. He takes the ANC from the second biggest party in KZN to the leading party in KZN,
Buffalo,
right?
yeah.
Right? And then after him, right? They continue to rule in KZN. ANC only lost KZN now. Then you also say Zuma is tribalistic. Zulus vote on tribal lines. KZN is the only province that has changed government 3 times.
Correct.
So Zulus are the most democratic South Africans. They don't vote because of who you are or who you're. They change parties. They've changed parties 3 times. No one else has done that. Western Cape went from National Party rule to ANC rule to DA rule, right? They've only gone from ANC to DA in the democratic dispensation. That's the only change that has happened. So even the Western Cape is not as democratic as KZN, right? And it's even a smaller economy, smaller population. You know what I mean? Smaller ports, you know, like the whole entire thing that people were trying to create around the desire for Zuma's leadership among South African people was to say that it's driven by tribal loyalty. I'm a Tsonga person. As soon as Zuma said, I'm opening up an MK, I resonated with that. I came back from America. I was in America and hiding in exile, right? I came back because I was like, oh, damn it. There's someone to challenge the ANC. The ANC won't have 50%. Because I knew that if the ANC's got over 50%, if I come back to the country, someone's going to try and kill me.
Right.
And the ANC's got 50%, they'll be able to cover it up.
So what do you think Zuma's plan was when he was president? Like, why do you say that he wasn't part of like the sort of the captured elites that prevail over the rest of?
Because he's not part of those families. So Thabo Mbeki, right?
So I understand that.
Is Govan Mbeki's son.
Correct.
Yeah.
But what did Zuma want to do you think, that was thwarted? Why do you say Zuma was the only real leader we had? Like, what was his plan that you really agreed with? Like, what did he want to do for South Africa?
He wanted the ANC to live up to its,
historical mandate.
Not just historical mandate. It's, conference resolutions.
Oh, right.
Nationalization of the land. All of those were conference resolutions. What Zuma said is that all the conference resolutions that I came in on in 2008, we haven't even done, we haven't even done 50% of them. And then those 2008 conference resolutions ended up becoming the conference resolutions when Cyril was elected in 2018. So 10 years later. So for 10 years of Zuma's presidency, the ANC did nothing. The ANC did nothing. Completely nothing. The only time the ANC's resolutions of 2008 started to come into play was during Cyril's first term. During Cyril's first term, he did all those 2008 resolutions.
Correct.
All right. Now it's in his second term. All right. And he's only signed bills that come from his previous administrations. He's living up to the resolutions. So, what we are able to see with this is that Zuma had the resolutions, had popularity, had the votes, had the backing on the ground, didn't have corporate South Africa backing him, and therefore he was stifled, could not put any of those resolutions in. Cyril had the corporate backing, and because he had corporate backing, he was then shielded from being seen as a radical, even though he is the president of the ANC that has put in the most radical.
Yeah.
He signed the most radical bills. He signed the NHI. Like, if you look at from a presidency and what they've been able to get done, Cyril is the most radical president we've ever had, right? Now, the only reason he's been that radical is because he's got the trust of corporate South Africa, of the elites. Zuma never had that.
Yeah.
Now, just imagine, had Zuma had the love of the people and the trust of corporate South Africa, how far he'd been able to get this country.
Well, I think a lot of issues might arise in terms of like the radical things are actually what is killing ANC support.
How?
So the podcast previous to this one, I had Dr. Frans Cronje on, and his main argument is South Africans, by and large, are sort of reasonable, pragmatic, centrist people. They're not radical revolutionaries at heart. And his data shows, this is his claim, his data show that the more radical the ANC becomes, the less support it has. So Thabo Mbeki had 69% in 2004.
Yeah.
Because we had an economy of 5% growth. We had double the jobs from 1990.
No, we just come out of isolation. That's the thing, that we stopped giving Thabo Mbeki credit he doesn't deserve. We came out of isolation. We weren't participating in the global economy. 70% of the world sanctioned us. Now you're dealing with 100% of the world's economy is now open to us. Obviously, you're going to have economic growth. And even that 5% is paltry compared to what the potential could have been. I mean, right now, Senegal's got 8-9% growth.
Well, I mean, if it continued, it would have been great. But do you think that
it wouldn't
the more radical the ANC becomes, the less support it has? Because it's borne out by the data, isn't it?
No. So, you see, that's another thing about the data. The data lies. Because because the more radical the breakaways get from the ANC, the more supports they get.
The breakaways, or
Hope was a centrist breakaway.
Sure.
Completely collapsed. I don't think it even got to 10%.
Yeah. Well, they were sabotaged.
Whatever, they had corporate support.
Sure.
You understand that? Because the corporate South Africa backed them. They were backed by Mbeki. You know what I mean? So they were backed by Mbeki loyalists. Mbazima Shiloya was there. The former Secretary General of the ANC in the before 2008 was Musiwa Lukota.
Correct.
He was the Secretary General. He moved into COPE.
Minister of Defense as well.
You understand what I'm saying? So he moved into COPE. So now you've got that centrist breakaway crushed completely. Then you have a leftist breakaway in the EFF. They immediately get close to 10% of the vote.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
But I think Julius Malema is just an extremely good manager of people. Like, I think he is a very good leader.
I just think that's
in that way.
That's the desire of the people. They want those radical policies.
But
then you get the MK.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
Sure.
I've got good reasons why EFF hasn't grown, and that's got to do with their immigration policy. That is 100% to do with.
It's self-sanctioned.
It's a complete betrayal of everything that they promised their voters when they started.
I agree. Okay.
It's a complete betrayal.
Sure.
It's like, we came on here to say, hey, you guys in the mines, you deserve your 12,500, and Cyril is coming here with the police and shooting you down, right?
Yes.
We're going to fight for your rights to earn a decent living. And then you're going to say, oh, find creative ways to come across the border. No, you're not going to win. So within his own base, he committed political suicide.
So he's diluting. So it's his fault.
It's his own fault.
Okay, fair enough.
You understand what I'm saying? The MK, they didn't go on a radical anti-migrant sentiment or anything else, but they were able to outflank the EFF, gain 50% more votes than the EFF. Why were they able to do that? Because what Zuma represents is the radical side of the ANC, and therefore people shifting to vote with him, even though his party was only a couple of months old, trusted the fact that he's been the radical side of the ANC all along.
Right.
And they trusted that they're moving towards a more radical shift within the ANC if they support him. And even if his party does not succeed, the mere fact that his party gets votes means that the center is not going to hold within the ANC. The NEC will then need to look at a way in which they're going to move more to the left,
right,
so that they can then restore that base. You know what I mean? Or bring those people back to the mother body. That is the truth of the matter. So I think that's a attribution of the lack of support in the ANC to the lack of radical policies is only supported by the fact that the ANC has not seen such a great voter fallout in instances where they've been seen to work with forces of the right or the center, or like them having a coalition with the DA. You'd assume that in all by-elections from then on, the radicals within the ANC would say, we're abandoning the ANC, let's move on to EFF, and you know what I mean?
Sure.
You expect a capitulation. So that's what Franz Grenier is speaking about. What he is appropriating to more center-leaning demographic in the country is actually conservatism, in that people want familiarity and stability.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's all it is.
It.
It's got nothing to do with whether they think that the policies of either the ANC or the GA or whatever the coalition's partners are in the GNU resonate with them. It's just that they want people there that they feel will get enough done so that things can function, so that they can actually have a life that's livable. You know what I mean? They're not in a crisis.
It's just not ideological.
It's got nothing to do with ideology. It cannot be ideological. Otherwise, the tie-up would have never happened in the first place. You know what I mean? It would have been a split. DA loyalists would have said, there's no way we're getting into bed with the ANC. You know what I mean?
I mean, I wanted DA and MK to get together. That would have been great.
That it would be great, but you need to get rid of Helen first. I think
Funny enough, she is probably the only person in South Africa who has a great relationship with Jacob Zuma, and she's spoken about it quite often in terms of. Look, they get along very well. They respect each other.
She has as great a relationship with Jacob Zuma as Angela Merkel had a terrible relationship with Vladimir Putin.
I think so.
Angela Merkel,
I know,
had a terrible public relationship with Vladimir Putin,
yes.
But they're both KGB agents. You know what I mean?
Yes.
She is from East Germany. She went to the University of Leipzig. You know what I mean? I don't think Helen is an East German,
No, I actually should know this. I read a book, but yeah. I know she's German.
Yeah. No, they're originally German, but the East Germans, as you'd know, were part of the Soviet Union. So once Putin and Angela Merkel got together, they knew that they couldn't show the public.
Yeah. That they understood each other. You know what I mean? Europe couldn't see that, hey, Germany is going to ally with Russia and undermine us and compromise us like they ended up doing with, the Nord Stream and all that type of stuff. But that eventually happened. So what you're seeing right now is that if you look at, I'd say, if you look at the MK is aligning with anybody, I think they're more likely to align with Action SA than DA. The problem with DA is that they've lobbied so much to create this Swargafar Zuma, anti-Zuma thing, right? That their own loyalists believe in it. They can't walk it back.
You know what I mean? They can't walk it back.
I agree.
And
even though it's probably the best coalition on paper and in theory. So, a real question to you, and so we need to be on our way because the sun's creeping up, destroying our cameras. But a real question for you is, are you in favor of South Africa falling in line with this more radicalness towards like sort of expropriation and NHI? Do you think these are actually good for our country or not?
Look, no one complains that Israel has NHI of their own,
Well, I mean, it's a fundamentally hugely wealthy country.
That sells diamonds that they don't mine. Yeah. As we were. So I think that we need to take care of the health of our people.
I agree.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
But just because we believe that, it doesn't mean that this idea is the best way to achieve that. I think there's a lot of weirdness in South Africa where we want this outcome, so then we somehow, because of this outcome that we really want, somehow this policy is the one that will lead to that outcome. And I think that's completely incorrect. Not NHI specifically, but I think there are various good ways to really give good quality healthcare to South Africans. But it doesn't have to be just NHI. It could be like a variety of things we could try. Like Finland has NHI plus insurance plus gap cover plus. There's so many different ways to solve it.
I don't think we should be solving it for us. That's the thing.
Why should we just follow this one?
I don't think we should be solving it for us. I think we should be doing it the same way ESCOM did it in the past. So ESCOM was like built to be our state power provider, right? And to also provide power at cost to the state. The surplus was supposed to be sold to our neighbors at a profit.
Correct.
That's what we need to be able to do with all the public services that we can afford as a country. We're a rich enough country to afford public services for our population, and we're a rich enough country to invest in ensuring that we can expand the public services that we provide to our population, to our neighbors for a profit.
I understand that.
So therefore, if we've got Mediclinic as a private healthcare provider and everything else in South Africa, right? And we subsidize them, etc., we should also then, in the same way, be able to then subsidize Mediclinic's expansion, let's say into Botswana or Zimbabwe or Zambia, maybe Zambia better.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's say Mediclinic's oncology departments. Zimbabwe's got a great need for them. We should be able to support them in expanding those services in those countries and growing it for profit, and so they can maybe compete with other private healthcare providers in those markets.
But you need good government leaders that make sure it's done efficiently, right?
We don't need good government leaders. This country is run by 5 people, as it stands currently.
Yeah.
It's run by 5 people. Everybody else is just workers. You know what I mean? It's like a big organogram of people that are put into position to pretend that they're doing stuff. But at the end of the day, the power is held in the center. So that's what we need to do. We need to devolve that power down, right? And then start giving people responsibility. The biggest problem with South Africa is that South Africans are being taught to have zero responsibility. And you see it in the women, right? Because women have got ways in which they can run away from. No, just in general. You see it in our women. Like women will say today, damn it, I raised my kids and all these things and whatnot. It's like, those are your kids. So you actually want to have zero responsibility for your kids? Your kids? You know what I mean? The fact that you can say that in public and you can be supported by other women who agree with that sort of ridiculous groupthink, you know, just shows you the level of the social contagion we're dealing with. With men, yes, you can want to have that convenience, but you have to be a man at some point in time. You know, you have to provide for somebody. You have to provide for yourself.
You have to take responsibility
for yourself.
Of course.
Unfortunately, the world is not going to take responsibility for you.
Sure.
You know?
So do you think there's an entitlement issue in our country?
I think there's a responsibility issue in our country.
Of responsibility.
Yeah, no one wants to take responsibility. So even for like it's things like our infrastructure projects, right? They're building a bridge so that you can cross over the highway from your township. They should come around and collect. Not that they're collecting for the project, it's supposed to fund the project. They're collecting so that people have a vested contribution.
Right.
You understand? We contributed something. Yes, I paid 10 rand, but I paid something.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So what do you make of these, so I went to Oranje 2-3 years ago, and I'm not an Afrikaner, I would never live there.
No, I watched that video.
But I was really impressed with this sort of self-sufficiency paradigm they've got, right? Yeah. They don't ask anyone for anything. They save up money. They invest it in infrastructure.
That's it.
It's small. It's 3,500 people in Oranje. They want to get to 10,000. Do you think there's a lack of that self-sufficiency model sort of in other nations in South Africa?
Just in other communities.
Yeah. Okay.
The same thing that you are able to get right with Oranje, you should be able to get right within the tribal homelands. And you should be able to say, Chief.
Yeah.
You as the chief should be able to have your own little chieftainship and Oranjeship.
Correct.
In your own little community and keep it like that.
I completely agree. Why?
Yeah.
Why isn't that happening?
Why isn't that happening? Because then that takes away from the people that profit off of taking away our responsibilities. So we're a nanny state.
Yes. I
Yeah.
agree.
So now we're telling our nanny to go and watch DSTV and we'll take care of ourselves. So, she's not going to do that.
Look, I watch the news sometimes and people say, oh, there's been a pothole here, or like the tap's been dry and we're like waiting for the government. I'm like, why? Like, why don't you just take ownership and like just fucking fix it? Excuse my language.
Yeah.
It's a bit frustrating when people are like just seem to be waiting for something to
Because there's no political education.
Right.
So and this is especially for guys like Ronaldo. Ronaldo lives in PE, right? He's a YouTuber. He shouldn't need to join a political party to get involved in the politics of his own community.
Yeah.
He should be able to, as an independent, say, okay, I'm going to run this ward. I'm going to raise awareness and do something within my community. And we should be encouraging more of that. The more we encourage young people to play a role within their own communities, the better we are. Now, the thing is that we do that for white kids, and in white communities, we don't do that for black communities. And I'll give you an example of what we don't do in black communities. As a black kid on the weekend, as a black adult, on the weekend, I don't go back to my black high school to watch them play soccer, rugby, or whatever it is. So therefore, I'm not part of the community. Therefore, I don't know what they need. Therefore, I don't know how I can assist. I don't know how I can plow back. You go to any white neighborhood, the old boys are always there, checking out who the young guys are, who the new legends are going to be, who's going to have their name written up on, in the hall, in the school. We don't have that in our communities, so we don't reinvest, even without money, just time.
But why isn't that happening in the black communities? Because
we are told that our communities are dumping sites, and therefore we need to be extracted from that. Those are places that we need to escape. Benny McCarthy, the greatest footballer South Africa has ever produced, doesn't have a school in Hanover Park.
Yeah.
But he's from there.
But same with...
So what is Benny McCarthy? Benny McCarthy is a typical colored. How does a typical colored think? A typical colored thinks, I need to find myself a white girlfriend or a white wife and make sure that my kids are not as black as I am.
So do you think there's some sort of, maybe a strong term, like is it a bit of like self-hating?
No, it's white supremacy. If whiteness is supreme, everyone is going to become proximus to whiteness so that they can gain privilege.
So everyone wants to live white.
That's
fair to say?
Because whites are living the best life, everyone wants to live a better life than they're living, and that makes them have to live a life that's close to the whites.
But do you think there's something culturally about whites that develops those sort of habits that are maybe not prevalent somewhere else?
No.
Or is it just, so what makes whites do these things that you like, but maybe your people don't? Like why?
No, it's because we're in an industrial economy.
Yeah.
So white culture and white values reward you. That is it. But in terms of white culture and Western culture, and Gareth Cliff says this, hey, Western. South Africa is not Western. We're Africans. This is Africa, right? We should never ever try to be Western. Why should we never try to be Western? Because then, we're going to leave all our grandparents in retirement homes. That's not African. We don't do that. Yeah. We look after our, you know what I mean? Like those are certain things. So we aim for Western, culture so much that we like, let's build a retirement village and stuff like that. So many things like, actually, why aren't we, even black and white Africans, saying, what is it about Africa that makes it comfortable for us to retire or grow old? Because that's the aim, is that your old age should be a pleasure.
Yes.
It should be it should have so much pleasure that all you can do is use it to, impart, generational wealth on your great-grandchildren or your grandchildren, whoever it is, you know what I mean, that you encounter. And that's what we need to work on. And that is a very basic thing. It all starts with knowing what is the most important thing. The most important thing is water. Once you have water, you clean your house. You learn cleanliness. You clean yourself. You learn cleanliness. You nourish yourself. You drink water. You learn cleanliness. You water your plants. You grow them. You learn responsibility. You understand? You grow them to a point where you got a surplus. You wash them. You clean them. You trade them. Yeah. And now you've created something of value. And it all starts with understanding the value of water.
So this is where I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask the data question.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing I agree with you with. I think this is my grand plan for this channel generally. So I make talking head videos and I do podcasts. But the grand plan of the channel is I think the identity of South Africa is largely fake. Like the Rainbow Nation is largely fake.
Yeah.
I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
Number two, I think history has stripped us of our identity as people that live here. Like you talk about the different nations of South Africa. I fully invested in that idea. And number three, and most importantly, you say water is the most important thing. I think actually the lack of identity is the most important thing. Because if we don't know where we come from, who we are, what our traditions are, what we hold dear, etc., we actually can't do much else. We just become economic cogs in an economic zone called South Africa. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but
I agree with
maybe what we really need to do, and I actually I actually had this idea for the DA, which is obviously the wrong platform. I'm not part of the DA at all.
Yeah.
But I said, why don't you have a campaign where people are actually proud of who they actually are as a Tsonga or a Zulu or a Venda or whatever the case might be. And once you know who you are, you can actually cooperate with other people that are not part of your tribe. But you can't do that willingly if you don't know who you really are. So the left woke thing is actually correct in this regard, that identity is like super important. And I don't think we have enough of that in South Africa. We are meant to be like this Rainbow Nation, constitutional liberal state, but it's not written on the hearts of people in this country. We are not Rainbow Nation liberal people. We are actually far more conservative in a real identitarian way. And no one speaks to that. Or am I completely out of the plantation?
Sure. I'll need a minute. The answer to your question is religion. South Africa doesn't have its own religion. And America was able to get its own religion right. Now, I'm not talking about whether it be Christianity, Judaism, whatever. Those are the religions that we know, the Abrahamic religions. We need a religion of South Africa. And the Church of America has been the cinema. You got indoctrinated into your Americanness by watching American cinema, and the collective conscious of the Anglosphere is very much premised on the ideals that have been spread around the world by Hollywood. And that's what we need to be able to build for South Africa. You are able to do that through TV shows, you are able to have your Seven Delan, you are able to have your Igolis, your Isidingos, your Generations, and all of those things, right? But what we found is that they ended up losing the plot when they tried to mix everyone up together. And then you started then having your language-based shows. So you'd have your, it's about to be cancelled, but you'd have your vendor show, Mubango. You've got new Zulu shows that are on some of the Uzalo. There's like a big series. It's a Zulu, but it's Zulu. It's based in KwaZulu-Natal. Mnet were the ones who actually brought that up when they did the Isibaya series, and now they're doing this Shaka Ilembe series. The problem with that is that they're doing it for TV, which people are no longer watching, right? And also, TV is like the lowest form of entertainment when it comes to film. It's the lowest, Yeah, okay, yes, now there's YouTube and viral skits and stuff like that, yes, and TikTok, yes. But in terms of the mainstream, TV is the lowest. The highest is cinema. And unless you've got it in the cinema, people are not buying into it like that. So that's what we need. We need to create our own Tom Cruise in South Africa. Not because of the Scientology, but just like...
Yeah.
I go to watch Tom Cruise with my dad. We watch the Top Gun movie because it's Tom Cruise. You know what I mean? Will Smith, I watch him with my dad.
We need to create cultural phenomenons that the nation can understand together.
And share.
Is that fair? Okay.
So we've been able to do that to somewhat of a degree with like our Springboks. You say like someone like our Springbok teams fills the stadium. Yeah. But the thing is that outside of the game, outside of the sport, right, they are not feeding into the narrative that gives us a collective identity as South Africans and also celebrates our our individuality. As people of various nations within the country. So that's what we need to work on. We need to work on South Africanism. You know what I mean? The South Africanisms are something that we're building. They're part of our colloquial lexicon, but they aren't inbred within our culture, where you can tell that there are certain values that come from South Africa and that only South Africans understand or can adhere to.
Right. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we have to close. The cameras are basically switching off due to battery, but I'd love to have you on again.
No, please, yes.
I think I appreciate the trolling. I really do. And I think we sort of agree on a lot of stuff, and I hope that my audience, understands you a bit better now.
No, thank you for having me.
I think we really have the same goals. We have different ways of expressing them.
Yeah.
On the second conversation, I think we'll be much more aligned. Thank you
for having me. Thanks for the coffee. Thanks for the cranberry juice. And like, subscribe, share, clip it up and put it on TikTok. Make us famous.